All right. If you could start off by saying and spelling your first and last name and giving us your title.
Chuck Fleischmann, Chuck Fleischmann, United States Representative, 3rd District of Tennessee.
All right. And recently you were named chairman of House Appropriations Energy and Water Development Subcommittee. Kind of talk to us a little bit about one, what that means to you and what you hope to do with that position.
Well, thank you. I have served on the Energy and Water Subcommittee as long as I've been on the Appropriations Committee, and that's been a decade. It has been my long-term goal to actually serve as chairman, or as we affectionately call in Washington, D.C., the cardinal slot on that subcommittee. Several things had to happen. First of all, we needed to get in the majority, which we did in the last election. So in the new Congress, my party, the Republican Party, is in the majority. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, I had to demonstrate to the full committee chairperson, to our steering committee, and to our leadership that I was able, capable, and worthy of this coveted slot. And I'm very fortunate. Yesterday, it was made official. I will be the subcommittee chair on energy and water. And the importance of that is large and small. And let me address that. In a macro sense, obviously, I'm Tennessee's only appropriator, member of the Appropriations Committee in the House. That's the A of A committees. Tennessee, fortunately, now has all 4 A committees covered in Congress. But on that appropriations role, especially with the departure of Senator Alexander years ago in the Senate as a chairman on appropriations, Tennessee needs a very well-placed appropriator. So I work with our governor. I help the entire state. In a more parochial way, the Oak Ridge Reservation, which is near and dear to my heart, which probably I am best known, whether it was President Obama, President Trump, or the Biden administration, when people speak with me, they basically associate me with the Oak Ridge Reservation. I'll be specific. Oak Ridge National Laboratory, the Y-12 security plant, the uranium processing facility, and perhaps what I'm best known for, the large nuclear cleanup mission. In an environmental sense, we're cleaning up legacy waste in Oak Ridge and all over the country. That is now $7.4 billion worth of annual investment. It's great jobs for a lot of Knoxvillians, a lot of Oak Ridgers, and a lot of people in East Tennessee. In the southern part of our district, that means funding for the water projects such as the Chickamauga Lock. So it's a coveted slot. It's an important slot. And it's one of the less contentious subcommittees. And what I mean by that is this is a subcommittee, unlike my previous subcommittee, which was Homeland Security. I was the ranking member on appropriations and Homeland Security. It was very contentious. It was very polarized, understandably, given our climate. Energy and water, we get along famously well, Republicans and Democrats working to fund key initiatives, not only with the Army Corps of Engineers, but also with the great DOE, Department of Energy portfolio, both on the civil side and the weapons side.
All right. And you said you were telling me off camera that this also a lot of Knoxvillians will come out there and work.
Absolutely. If you go on Pellissippi Parkway any day, obviously a lot of people choose to live in Knoxville. It is a beautiful city. I love Knoxville. I went to school there. It's always a special place and a special visit. Many Knoxvillians work in Oak Ridge at one of the sites, and then, of course, choose to live in Knox County, which is a beautiful county. Knox County is actually in the 2nd congressional district. All of Oak Ridge, which is Anderson and Roane counties, in the 3rd district. But yes, tremendous economic impact on Knoxville and the region, estimated even with the $7.4 billion worth of annual investment, that basically converts to around $50 billion a year annual for an East Tennessee impact.
All right. Was there anything that we haven't touched on with the subcommittee that you wanted our viewers to know about?
Perhaps on the full committee. Obviously, the appropriation committee has 12 cardinals, 12 subcommittees, 12 appropriation chairs. I will be also serving, since I'm in the majority, on 3 committees. So I will chair energy and water. I will find out this week, probably labor, education, health, and human services, critically important to East Tennessee and our great University of Tennessee, my alma mater in Knoxville, but it's a great system. UTC is my constituent in Chattanooga. So we'll have that, and possibly even being seated on the defense subcommittee of appropriations. If I get those 3, I will probably have the best hand, the best portfolio, perhaps of any sitting Republican on the appropriations committee. It just strengthens my role on the full committee and allows me to do more in my role as chairman of energy and water appropriations.
All right, and so you had mentioned ORNL. So we'll move on to this topic. And recently, and we sat down with the director, Thomas Zachariah, and he kind of gave us a retrospect of his career. In your opinion, what did you like most that he had done during his career at ORNL, and can you give your thoughts on his retirement?
Absolutely. I have worked with 2 lab directors in my tenure on the Energy and Water Subcommittee and in my representation of all of Anderson and Rowan counties. First one was Tom Mason, who was exemplary in every way. He now chairs the Los Alamos lab, a wonderful person and a friend. Dr. Zachariah came back and did an outstanding job as lab director. The things that stand out to me, and I fund this, and it's very important to me, and I'm going to continue to fund this. Oak Ridge National Laboratory, of the 17 national laboratories, is the premier national laboratory. What I mean by that specifically, every function, and I believe there's 25, that a national laboratory performs, we attained under Dr. Zachariah's leadership. We were always 1 or 2 short. Now ORNL does everything that a national lab does. That is critically important. We are the leading national lab in the country. The other thing that I think stands out, probably with Dr. Zachariah's leadership, and I don't want to downplay any of the other accomplishments, is supercomputing. The supercomputer Frontier is the fastest, smartest, strongest supercomputer in the world. It is actually an exascale computer. When I came to Congress, we were at the petaflops level. But when I came to Congress, we were #1 in the world. Within 6 months to a year of my congressional tenure, we had slipped to 5. We had fallen behind China, Russia, and a number of other countries. I want our listeners to know we now are #1 in the world again with supercomputing, and we are continuing to be #1. So Dr. Zachariah worked very hard to make sure with his great team at ORNL, and it's leadership, but it's also the team that is being built. We have the world's probably best fusion and fission expert at the lab. We have the best materials people at the lab. We have the best supercomputing people at the lab. Pick the area. ORNL is deep with its team, deep with its bench, and that's what I fund. And I'm very proud to be able to fund that, and that should continue.
All right, and so with the new interim director coming in, so the one thing I noticed is his name going to be Thomas?
No, it's going to be Jeff Smith. And great question. We had 2 Thomases. Now we have Jeff Smith, and he will do an outstanding job. He's no stranger to the lab. He worked there for years, and he was kind enough to come out of retirement. He did not need this job, but to reach an agreement with UT Battelle, our great University of Tennessee at Knoxville, and Battelle that runs Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and the Department of Energy, which has certain thoughts and requirements on a lab director. This was a consensus that was reached, It will be good for the lab on day one. Jeff Smith will be able to run the lab and to run it well. He's very well respected at the reservation. He's very well respected with the department. I don't know if this will be a 6-month, 1 year, or 2 year slot. Ultimately, we will choose a full replacement for Dr. Zachariah. But in the interim, we won't miss a beat with Jeff Smith. He'll do a good job.
All right, and moving on to something a little bit more close to home and personal. Matthew Heath is now free. Can you first of all give us your reaction to all the hard work that you guys put in to bring him back?
Thank you very much. This was probably one of the most difficult tasks for me and for my staff since I've been in Congress, and perhaps the most rewarding. Matthew's family, or some of their family, was from Union County, which I represented for 12 years. When the family reached out to me, and these are wonderful people, and told me about Matthew's situation, which was shocking, which was sad, which was very, very dangerous, being literally imprisoned by a rogue regime in Venezuela, the Maduro regime, which is not recognized by the United States, understandably and correctly, put us in a very difficult situation. Matthew was held in very difficult, horrible circumstances. He was jailed, and it was very scary. It was hard for him. It was hard for his family. It was hard for us because as we would reach out, our federal government did work with us. This was a team effort. We reached out to the Trump administration. We reached out to the Biden administration. We received tremendous cooperation in that regard. And having Matthew finally released was incredible. But perhaps the kindest thing that came out of this, we serve a lot of constituents and help a lot of people in a lot of very difficult situations. That might be somebody who can't get a well-deserved medal, a veteran. It might be somebody who can't get their Social Security check or passport. We help thousands of people every year. All congressmen do, regardless of their party. That's what we do. And I came back to Washington and I received the kindest thank you note probably I had ever received in my 12 years in the House from Matthew Heath, thanking me for my involvement. It was really special. This will be a letter that I will frame, I will cherish, I will keep that. And I shared that with my staff because my staff worked with me. And when you sit back and stand back and you look, obviously in my role, there is a political role, but the official role, that role of service to the constituents and the people of the 3rd District of Tennessee, and as an appropriator, I feel I serve all of our great state and our nation. To get that type of a profound note of thanks was very, very touching to me and really makes it all worthwhile because in our role as an elected official, most people are kind, but some people sadly are not kind. And under our great First Amendment in our system, I think it's great that people can be critical of their elected officials and say things. Sometimes, sadly, they're not true, and that does hurt. But to get the kind of thanks and gratitude from somebody who literally could have been killed and died in captivity and now is free and is recuperating meant so much to me, and it always will.
All right, and if you don't want to answer this part, this is fine because I kind of asked you this before the interview. But is there any part of that letter that you'd be willing to share that's not as personal?
I would prefer to keep that private between Matthew and our staff because it is very thankful. It is very laudatory of me. And I never want it to look like I'm using that because I don't need to do that and would never do that as to try to gain public favor or to bring attention to me. I want to bring attention to what Matthew went through, what our government went through. And this was, again, a cooperation between myself, our executive branches, and that means both the Trump and Biden administrations both were very helpful. It shows us what we can do when we all come together and put our American hat on first and put our partisan hats on secondary to that.
Okay, well, and I'm just going to have 2 more questions because I actually just had a question sent to me from our Tennessee This Week producer because he's going to use some of
Wonderful
those.
people. Know the show. I've been on the show several
Yeah,
times.
yeah. So this first question is just kind of following up with Matthew Heath in another way. So the process to get him home, it's my understanding that it was a little bit more difficult due to the fact that there is not a consulate or embassy there. Did you find that to be true as well?
Absolutely. In fact, that was the main impediment. And so our listeners understand the Maduro regime is a rogue, radical left wing dictatorship. And Venezuela, due to its oil reserves, due to its wonderful people, was in a position that at one point in time, it was the strongest economy in South America. Under Maduro and the radical socialist policies, it has literally driven the country into despair. Many of the migrants who have come over, when I went to the border in my role as Homeland Security ranking member on appropriations, I was speaking my rudimentary Spanish with them. Many were from Venezuela and imparted to me the difficulties under the Maduro regime. So yes, you're absolutely right. It was the key impediment. There was no official embassy contact, so all contact had to be worked through outside, inside. We were patient. Matthew's family was infinitely patient and wise to allow us to work it through the appropriate channels, because without an embassy, without official recognition of the Venezuelan government, it was extremely difficult to get things done. We did ultimately, and credit is deserved really by all. Two administrations, both Trump and Biden's administration, our office, and other federal offices which got involved.
All right. And so changing topics, this came from the Tennessee This Week producer. Where do you stand on potential cuts or changes to Social Security or Medicare?
Well, right now, I think most members of Congress do not want in any way, shape, or form cuts. We do not want to scare our seniors and the like. Social Security and Medicare are on the mandatory side of the spending equation. We talked a lot in our earlier part of the interview. I am on the Appropriations Committee. All of the appropriated money is on the discretionary side of the federal budget. Unfortunately, now that is about 25%, maybe even less of the federal budget. 75% is Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on the national debt, most of Obamacare, about 85% of the Affordable Care Act. Those are the drivers of our deficits. Yes, we need to be fiscally responsible as we appropriate dollars on the discretionary side. But to answer your question, I am ready, willing, and able to look at reforms to save the system that do not put current seniors in any peril whatsoever. So if we go through, and I think we're probably going to need to go through and look at certain changes so that younger folks such as yourself, when you get there, have that option to have Social Security there and to be protected. I think we want to make sure that that system is safe, is secure, and is properly funded. Under its current trajectory, Social Security and unfortunately Medicare are poised to have some very difficult times in the very near future. So I hope that in a rather bipartisan, bicameral, and with help from the executive branch, we can look at this and come up with some solutions. But once again, to let our East Tennessee seniors know they will be safe, they will be secure, and they will be protected.
All right. Was there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted our viewers to know about?
I just want to say thank you again. I have begun my 7th term. Fortunately, despite all of the rhetoric and turmoil that we saw last week, we now have a Congress in place, the 118th Congress in place. I will be a subcommittee chairperson on appropriations. And I really just want to say thank you. Doing my job is difficult, but when you represent constituents such as the Oak Ridge Reservation, when you represent wonderful people in Morgan, Scott, and Campbell counties north of Knoxville. And it is so much easier to do my job representing outstanding constituencies. And I do that, and I cherish that.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time out to do this.
Justin, thank you. Please reach out anytime. I look forward to visiting. And my best to your entire team.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
All right. You have a good day.